open up this meeting, and we've got a couple of things to clear up before we get started due to some circumstances. I've been asked to sit in and fill in as chairman, so if that's going to happen, we're going to need a motion for me to be the chairman tonight to run the meeting.
Also move.
And a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you very much. The second thing we need to take care of is Tara Booth is online, as far as I know, and she would like to be a part of the meeting, but we have to have a motion for her to accept her as part of the meeting.
So moved.
A second? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, passes. Thank you. Thank you, Taryn, for being here. Thank you. Welcome to everybody. Thank y'all for being here. I know it's a cold night, but we appreciate it. We have just a couple things to do tonight. First of all, did everybody get their packets in time to review them?
Yes.
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 Did you get a chance to look at your minutes, and do you have any additions, corrections to make?
No.
No.
All right, I'll take a motion to accept the minutes as they're.
Yeah, I'll move that we accept the minutes.
All right, second?
Aye.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Abstain.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Crystal, for what you do. Tonight we have one public hearing is what we're going to have, and we'll get started at in a few minutes. Before we do, I guess we'll ask Mr. Gill or Ms. Pruitt if they have anything they'd like to say.
Mr. Chairman, I'll introduce the public hearing tonight. Olivia Hall, who would be sitting here normally, could not be with us tonight, although she has prepared the packet along with help from Andrea Pruitt, and we'll get through it even though Olivia is not here. Your public hearing tonight deals with a proposed revision to Article 18, the waterfront residential overlay, typically known as W1. And another revision would be to Article 1 of definitions if the Planning Commission deems these revisions worthy. This revision to W1 has been discussed at 4 prior Planning Commission meetings. The idea was that W1 should be updated to address the inability to subdivide parcels that are within 800 feet of a tributary stream due to the restrictions placed on parcels within the waterfront residential overlay, which requires a minimum lot size of 2 acres. The intent is not to change anything on the waterfront. The intent is to remove inland areas that are far away from the waterfront from being subject to the waterfront residential overlay. These inland areas, if they were removed from the waterfront residential overlay, would not require a 2-acre minimum lot size, and the minimum lot size would be dictated by the underlying zoning, which is probably either R1 or A2. If it's R1, residential general, the minimum lot size would be 0.69 of an acre. If it's A2, the minimum lot size would be 0.75 of an acre. Glenn, if you would give me PC2. Okay, this is the packet that's online in case anyone has not seen it, or if you have seen it, you'll recognize it. I mentioned the Planning Commission has held 4 prior meetings on this. At the last meeting in November, there were 8 different options proposed to the Planning Commission for revisions to the W1. Several of those were really no-brainers. They proposed reducing the setback of 800 feet down to 600, 400, and 200, which, as I said, the intent is not to reduce the setback on the waterfront. The intent is to take out areas well inland so that they would not be subject to the waterfront residential overlay. This is the ordinance today. At the last meeting, the Planning Commission wanted to send option 3 to public hearing, which is what we're talking about tonight. This is adding the definition of water shoreline. You'll see the areas highlighted would be the changes that would be recommended in Article 18. Basically taking away that tributary stream reference, which right now is why these inland areas are part of the waterfront residential overlay. The tributary stream definition ties the applicability of this zoning ordinance to the solid blue line of the 7.5-minute quadrangle USGS topographic map. And that's why these inland areas that you'll see in maps coming up are currently included in the waterfront residential overlay. Moving through this ordinance, you'll see that under use regulations, there are no uses being added, no uses being taken out. You'll see under area regulations, there's no reduction in the minimum lot size of 2 acres. All properties that would remain within the waterfront residential overlay district would still require a 2-acre minimum lot size. There's no changes to the setbacks. All properties that would still be subject within 800 feet of tidal waters would still have the same setbacks that they do today. There's no changes in the lot dimensions. You would still have to be, the lot would have to be 180 feet wide at the setback line. Again, the current ordinance right here, and this is telling to me, the current ordinance says the minimum water frontage for lots measured in a straight line from the intersection of the side property lines with the mean low water line shall average 200 feet, but in no event be less than 180 feet. The minimum water frontage. You'll see currently the waterfront residential overlay contains a lot of inland areas that have no water frontage. But our current ordinance says that to create a new lot in those areas, you have to have 200 feet of water frontage. But there is none in these areas that we're proposing to remove from the waterfront residential overlay. Further revisions would be to Article 1 definitions, which would be to add the water shoreline definition. That definition is identical to the VIMS, Virginia Institute of Marine Science definition, which you'll see in this document. It's the exact same definition, the VIMS definition. VIMS provides a very good benchmark, a very good metric from which to provide mapping for us to determine the 800 feet from the water shoreline. You'll see this is the current waterfront overlay district. You'll see that these inland stretches far into, away from the waterfront are currently in the waterfront overlay district. This is option 3 proposed. You'll see that these inland reaches are no longer in the waterfront residential overlay, but still, everything within 800 feet of the tidal shoreline along all 330 miles of shoreline in Lancaster County are still subject to the waterfront residential overlay. At a prior meeting, a planning commission member asked for the number of houses in the county that were sold in the affordable range, because part of the reasoning for revising the W1 is to allow for smaller lots to be able to be created in those inland areas. We enlisted the help of a reputable realtor in the county who compiled this list for us, houses sold in Lancaster from January 23 through December 24 at $250,000 or less. You can see that list there. I got a PowerPoint presentation to end my part of the presentation, but I want to allow Andrea to talk a little bit about this. There's been a lot of talk about how the waterfront overlay district came to be. And Andrea did a lot of research on this and created this map evolution of the waterfront overlay district. And so I'd like for her to take a few minutes to summarize this and help you understand it better.
Thank you. Okay, for a little bit of context and historical relevance regarding the waterfront overlay district, the staff compiled an evolution or a timeline of the ordinance. It was put together using Board of Supervisor minutes and archived Rappahannock record articles Again, this is a brief summary of details that includes things that are seemingly more relevant to the current discussion, namely the original adoption of the ordinance in 1988 and a major amendment in 1990. Also provided in the packet were some articles, the actual articles from the Rappahannock Record that discuss both of these actions. These are obviously not all the articles available from 1988 to present, but again, these represent the most relevant to this discussion, we believe. So basically, discussion of creating a waterfront overlay district began in 1987. The Planning Commission created an ad hoc committee to develop a recommendation that they could eventually amend if necessary, and then eventually submit to the Board of Supervisors. At this time, the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Act had not yet been passed and implemented, but it was certainly, on the horizon. The original proposal from the Planning Commission was basically all residential properties within 800 feet at high tide of tidal waters, or one parcel landward from tidal waters with 1.5 acre lots with 100 feet at the shoreline measured in a straight line, or an average of 180 feet for lots in a subdivision. The setback was 75 feet from the shoreline, and an 180-foot lot width where the house is built, and only one single-family house. That was then presented to the Board of Supervisors. They did not completely agree with that, so they workshopped the idea, and eventually what they did pass was in May 10th of 1988, which walked back some of what the Planning Commission had recommended. And so what was eventually passed was all residential properties adjoining tidal waters or the first 600 feet landward for larger parcels, 1 acre lots with 100 linear feet of shoreline, or an average 150 feet, and 75-foot setback at high water, 150-foot lot width where the house is built, only one single-family residence, except for there was an exception for R2 zoning at that time when there was R2 zoning. So that's what was passed. And then a year and a half later, a couple of years later, it resurfaced. So as the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Act started to become more implemented, discussion resurfaced about amending the waterfront overlay district, namely redefining the size and configuration of the lots, as well as redefining what properties are subject to the district. This happens almost simultaneously with the county receiving a sample Bay Act ordinance and having to start Bay Act implementation. Therefore, the Board of Supervisors decides to rewrite the proposed ordinance that adds in the language. So after getting this sample ordinance, they then rewrite it again, adding the language, all tidal shores and wetlands to include tidal and non-tidal wetlands connected by surface flow and contiguous to tidal wetlands or tributary streams. So that's where that language comes into play. It wasn't there when it was originally passed, but then they revised it in 90 to add that in. So the final version passed in May 31st of 1990, with the final version really being all residential properties within 800 feet landward of tidal shores and wetlands, with that added language in there. That's where we get the 2 acre lots, 180 foot of shoreline, average of 200 feet of shoreline. And basically what we generally have today, again, with adding in ENS control and vegetation buffers, as well as exempting R2 zoning. With the 1990 amendment, it was then reported actually in the Rappahannock Record that the area covered by the district increased from 31.5 square miles, or 23% of the county, to 73.6 square miles, or 55% of the county, was then encompassed by the waterfront overlay. So it was a huge jump. After that time frame, in this timeline, you'll see that there are other different amendments that happened throughout the process up to today, mostly things that are changing uses, minor-ish changes, not necessarily relevant to our discussion. So they're kind of in there, but they're not elaborated on. So basically, those are the two main things that kind of are relevant to what we're talking about today. And that's pretty much it.
All right.
Let me ask a question. In your research, Did the 800 foot, that number 800, is that a carryover from the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Act? Or is that just a number, we don't know where it came from?
I think it was, I don't exactly know where it came from, but that was the original recommendation from the Planning Commission in 1987.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting how they, you know, we started off with 600.
Yes.
And how did 600 come about? You know, so how did 800 come about?
Yeah, that's-
Is there any science behind it or anything like that?
I don't know if there was science per se, but I think it had to do, in the way I was reading, and again, this is from mostly the Rappahannock Record articles, so these are somebody's interpretation of what happened during these meetings, of course. But what I could ascertain from that was basically the idea of 800 feet more or less represented one parcel inward on average from the shoreline. So essentially encompassing the lots that are directly, the lots that are directly adjacent to the shoreline. So just one lot inward. And I think they thought that 800 feet was kind of a good number. But then when it gets to the Board of Supervisors, they compromise with that a little bit more and bring it back down to 600 feet. And then it goes back to 800, so.
The Chesapeake Bay Act state code has always been 100 foot. The 600 and the 800 were all local numbers. And as Andrea said, we don't know if there were any science behind that.
So now, let me ask you a question. So looking at this map, right? And then when you look at this map, so you still gotta be 100 feet off of all these little creeks that's not
Yep.
gonna be,
Yeah.
so 200, 400, 600, or the 800? What would matter? I mean, what would need to happen so it would, I mean, because if you took it down to 600, would that even matter at all as far as?
The only difference, and a picture's worth 1,000 words, so if you will, let me go through this little slideshow that Olivia put together. I might be able to help answer some of those questions that you just asked. Here's the existing waterfront residential overlay, and you can see how far it reaches inland from the shoreline. That is 800 feet from tidal shoreline and tributary streams. Current W1 on the left, proposed W1 on the right. You still have the 800 feet under the proposed. You still have the 800 feet from tidal shoreline in the county with the proposed revision. The only difference is the inland areas would no longer be applicable.
Yeah, but all that stuff still connects to this body. of water.
It does. It flows that way. But the Chesapeake Bay Act also is in play, not only within the 800-foot areas, but also along these reaches as well. The thought is, see, these areas up here right now, if you try to subdivide land well inland off of the water, you got to have a 2-acre minimum lot size up in these areas. You see how far it applies inland? You have to have a 2-acre minimum lot size there. If the revision is adopted, you would not need 2 acres in these areas anymore. The underlying zoning would dictate the size of the lot. And as we've had several examples over the past 4 meetings where if people did not have to have 2 acres, they would be able to subdivide their property. You know, one lady came in, she had 3 acres. She happened to be within the waterfront residential overlay. She wanted to subdivide off an acre for a family member. She couldn't, because when you're in the waterfront residential overlay and you want to go from 1 lot to 2 lots, you got to have 4 acres to have 2 2-acre lots. She only had 3 acres, she couldn't subdivide. So,
Just one more question. So if you are in that area, how close can you put a septic tank to those streams? I mean,
100
how far-
feet, 100 feet, which is the Chesapeake Bay Act requirement, state law. It's still state law within the 800-foot as well. You can't build anything closer than 100 foot to the water. But along this yellow area here, you have to have 2 acres for any new lot created after May 10th of 1988. And currently, you have to have 2 acres along these areas too. Let me try to explain this a little bit further. Here's a comparison of the two. You can see the yellow, the lighter green, I guess, areas along the waterfront are still in place. Nothing changes within 800 feet of tidal waters along all 330 miles of shoreline within the county. Nothing changes within 800 feet of tidal waters. This is Northumberland County here. What changes are these darker green areas far inland that would no longer be subject to the waterfront residential overlay, thereby allowing smaller lot sizes, which would be more affordable. You know, it's no question that a .69 acre lot or a .75 acre lot is going to be cheaper than a 2 acre lot. I mean, you can say what you want, that, you know, land value is a small percentage of a home site, and it is. But, you know, a smaller lot is going to be less expensive than a 2 acre lot.
And if I understand it correctly, by doing this option, these areas, the darker green that would come off, there's still water there, but it's just,
It's a
it
s-
might be a stream.
it's a stream.
Or a puddle.
It's a stream.
And you'd still have to be 100 foot off of it.
You still have to be
but
100
feet. You could subdivide it to make, okay.
Yeah.
That's what I'm
I
saying.
got one more question. You guys have been doing this a lot longer than me. But do we have a county, organization that, you know, that looks at this kind of stuff and said, this is okay to do?
Yeah, the zoning department. That's Olivia's department who looks at this. If somebody comes in and wants to subdivide their property, I mean, that's the first thing Olivia does, is go through, find out if it's subject to any of these overlay districts, and then that determines, you know, what size lot they can have.
Now, what I'm asking is, there's someone that deals with water, like that's on the water, just like the, you know, that says that this is safe to do.
On county staff, well, no, but state code is only 100 feet. State code, Lancaster County is the only county that I'm aware of that has the waterfront overlay district requiring a 2 acre minimum lot size within 800 feet of tidal waters. And I'm not saying that's wrong. That's been unique to Lancaster, and it's been a good thing for Lancaster. What I'm saying is the current W1 applies too far inland. And let me carry this a little further. We've got some slides that will hopefully help show this. This is Brown Store. This is Brown Store Road right here. This is Beans Road. You can see, same thing on the right side. The current W1 stretches all the way into Brown Store. Now, I haven't seen any water when I go through Brown Store. I haven't seen any waterfront. If someone comes in and wants to subdivide property here, you know, the ordinance requires that it have 200 feet of water frontage. Any new lot created must have 200 feet of water frontage. My question is, where's the water frontage here? There is no water frontage. So these areas would no longer be applied, no longer be subject to the W1, and the underlying zoning, probably R1 or A2, would dictate the minimum lot size. So instead of 2 acre lots being required here in the Brown Store area, it would be, as I've said before, .69 acre lots for R1 and .75 of an acre lot for A2. That's one example. Here's another one. No, it's the same one. Let me
Don, while you're getting that straight, if I can ask a question. In reference to the actual flowing water, and I know, like, near where I live, it used to be a stream, and that stream is no longer there. So who has actually gone out to measure if there is a viable water source there, or it's just dried up land now that there's no longer water there. So therefore, the sediment or whatever would not be carried by water because there is no more water there.
Typically, a surveyor does that for us before they bring the plat to us. But if a homeowner comes to us before they have hired a surveyor, Olivia will go out and do a field determination on whether that is a perennial stream or an intermittent stream. The Chesapeake Bay Act language says that, that 100-foot buffer applies to wetlands and non-tidal wetlands that are contiguous to tidal wetlands and connected by surface flow. You have to have both of those things for the Chesapeake Bay Act to apply. So, like I said, most of the time, a surveyor has already done this work, brings us a surveyed plat, which shows where that point of perenniality is. If it hasn't been done, then Olivia will go out and make a field determination.
Okay, and the reason I ask that, because reading, all of the letters and the concerns, the trend is that sediment, toxicity, and all of that is going to be carried by the water. Well, there's no water there left to carry it anymore. So these people are now being prohibited from doing what they would like to do because of something that existed years ago and no longer exists.
Or it could be an intermittent stream, that's not flowing 100% all the time. So,
Well, see, knowing where your property is, I would almost bet my life it's in the waterfront overlay.
yeah.
Well, mine,
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah.
It is. And
Yeah.
I'm 70 years old, and I haven't seen water there since I was 5, maybe.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Well, and here's another example. This is Regina, right here. This is where Pittman's store was in Regina. You can see how far the waterfront residential overlay extends into the Regina area. Again, I ask you, where is the waterfront in Regina? This is Regina Road and Davis Mill Pond Road. And this is also showing the courthouse property. This is the new courthouse property right here. And it shows up right here. So you'll see that the new courthouse property is in the waterfront residential overlay currently. And again, I ask you, when you stand in that parking lot, where is the waterfront? If a new lot needed to be created there, ordinance requires 200 feet of water frontage. There is no water frontage. That's the whole point of this revision, is to get these inland areas that are currently subject to the waterfront residential overlay out of the waterfront residential overlay. Another example. This is Pinkertsville and Mary Ball Road. This is where Connie's Florist is right here. You can see how far the waterfront residential overlay applies there. Now, there is a pond, a large lake in here, but it's not tidal. It's not tidal.
Oh, it's a lake.
Yeah, so again, the waterfront residential overlay applies too far inland.
That lake never runs over, never goes anywhere?
Here's another example. This is the town of Kilmarnock boundary, and this is Main Street at the top of Norris's Hill. This is the Walmart property right here. Now, the W1 does not apply anywhere within town limits because they have their own zoning. But you can see outside of the zoning, outside of the town zoning, where the waterfront residential overlay currently applies. And again, no tidal shoreline there. Here's another example. This is Hills Quarter. Hills Quarter right over here. You can see where the current waterfront residential overlay cuts into a part of Hills Quarter. Now, this is a good slide too, because you can see this is water. This is open water. You can see that the 800-foot waterfront residential overlay is...
Now where's that piece of water?
That is Dimer Creek.
Okay.
That's shown right here, that the waterfront overlay applies. That lighter green still applies around tidal shoreline. But outside of that 800-foot of tidal shoreline, these areas would no longer be included in the waterfront residential overlay. It's also important to note that this area between Kilmarnock, Irvington, and Whitestone is the county's primary growth area. That's, the comprehensive plan states that smaller lots and higher density should be directed to the primary growth area. Well, having these inland areas of the waterfront residential overlay apply in the PGA is counterintuitive to increasing density within that primary growth area. I mean, i.e., currently it requires a 2-acre minimum lot size, whereas if these areas were no longer subject to the W1, the underlying zoning would apply.
The one thing I guess I keep playing back in my mind is that all you're trying to do is allow smaller lot size in that area. The setbacks and all the rules still apply.
All the other rules, setbacks, lot sizes applies where the W1 will still apply, yes.
But guys, if there's no water here, why was all this done out here like this?
Because of the definition of tributary stream, which states that any property within 800 feet of a solid blue line on the USGS 7.5-minute quadrangle map requires this 800-foot setback. So there was a perennial stream that comes up in here, to this point, to get the 800 feet off of that perennial stream.
And when was the blue line created?
I'm not sure when that USGS map was done. And that's another thing. See, the revisions that are being proposed will be based off of VIMS, Virginia Institute of Marine Science mapping, which is updated, all the time. It's a very good benchmark, a very good metric in which to use, in my opinion. But this slide shows that there is still the 800-foot waterfront residential overlay around tidal shoreline. It just would not apply beyond that 800-foot from tidal shoreline.
Let me do an example. We seem to be involved in examples at this point. The guy that proposed this is probably the major developer.
Mr. Chop, I'm going to have to cut you off right there. We're still doing that presentation. And number one, the guy you're speaking of, this is not his proposal. This is staff's proposal. You want to say, and somebody else in this room may want to say that the developer, David D'Onofrio, this is his plan. This is not his plan. This is staff's plan. David D'Onofrio's plan was different than this.
The materials that Olivia sent me describes in detail how this whole thing originated, and the fact that it originated with David D'Onofrio, who came to the county with this proposal, not only the proposal,
This is not
but
his
maps,
proposal.
charts,
No.
language, the whole.
This is not his proposal. This is staff's proposal,
At
period.
this point, I'm sure it is. I want to talk about a stream that's involved in this matter that's really a stream. And it flows through the property that he proposed to the county 18 years ago, King's Grant, 800 acres of property to be developed with 575 homes. And through most of that property flows a stream that's very familiar to me. I live on the eastern branch of the Corrietoman, right around the corner from Quarters Cove, which is formed by a stream that comes through most of that 795 acres. And my wife Betty and I have kayaked that stream all the way from Quarters Cove up to Black Stump Road. So this is a stream that's a stream of water that's kayakable. I'm sure you're right about in the far reaches of the county, there are streams that have dried up and that sort of thing. But there are plenty of other streams that are still there. There are marshes. Anyway, so most of the land, a good part of his development, the density allowed within 800 feet would go from 2 acres, which is a little less than 90,000 square feet per home, to would probably be R1, which would be 30,000 square feet per lot. So the lots would decrease in size by 3. It would be a third the size if this law didn't change. The problem with that is that the more homes, the more cars, the more people, it's just inevitable that the more houses, septic systems, cars, pets, and people that you put on a given piece of land, the more you reduce the quality of that water, and that water is flowing into our whole system of water in the county. So it's reducing the quality of our water. And I'm not sure we can afford that. I've lived in our house for 24 years on the eastern branch of the Corritoman, and not one of those years has it ever been safe, according to health authorities, Virginia health authorities, to eat an oyster out of that creek. So we're not in a situation where we can afford to discount or not pay any attention to what kind of pollutants we have in our water. In any event, my point is that we're not talking about dried up streams all over the county here.
One question for you. You said you kayaked the area close to Kings Grant. Did you go under Blackstump Road when
No.
you were kayaking? Okay. In the development that everybody likes to bring up, the Kings Grant, and again, this is not David D'Onofrio's plan, this is staff's plan. In that plan, everything on the side of Blackstump Road where you kayaked would still be subject to the W1, would still require a 2-acre minimum lot size. The only areas of Kings Grant that would no longer require the 2-acre minimum lot size would be on the landward side of Blackstump Road, back towards Irvington Road. So where you kayaked was tidal water. So nothing changes on tidal water. That's been the whole point here. Nothing changes on tidal shoreline. Getting back to the presentation, here is, I've only got 3 more slides. Here is Riverwood off of Devil's Bottom Road. And you'll see, again, there is shoreline way down here, but this lighter green shows that the waterfront residential overlay still applies. What comes out is the inland areas beyond that waterfront residential overlay. Here is Muskemon, up Courthouse Road, and this is the Muskemon area. This is not water, this is Northumberland County up here. That's why it's not shown in parcels. You can see how far the waterfront residential overlay comes into this area of Muskemon. I can, you know, my farm is not far from here. I can tell you I've never seen water up there. So again, no tidal shoreline in this area. Here's Field Trial Road, off of Lara Road that goes through almost 3 miles over to Route 3, Mary Ball Road. This is not water, this is Richmond County right here. That's why it's not shown in parcels. You can see on Field Trial Road, which is large acreage tracts, farmland, timberland, how far the waterfront residential overlay applies on Field Trial Road. Here again, you can see where the tidal water stretches, you still have the waterfront residential overlay around the tidal shoreline. It's just the areas beyond 800 feet from tidal shoreline that would no longer be subject to the W1. In the final slide, this is Maradica Road, right here. This is Witt's Corner, this is Maradica Road, Pierce's Road, Nutsville Road. Right here is the county dump up at, the convenience center site. up at Nutsville. And this is a large acreage farm right here. You can see, again, how far the waterfront residential overlay applies inland, all the way up to Maratica Road. The county dump site is, convenience center site is almost within the waterfront residential overlay. So the bottom line here is a lot is going to be said and has been said that we are reducing the setbacks around the shoreline. That is patently false. Nothing is changing within 800 feet of tidal waters. The only thing that's changing is that the areas outside of 800 feet of tidal waters would no longer be under the W1 waterfront residential overlay. With that, I'll shut up.
Anybody here have any more questions? Mr. Young, Ms. Pruitt?
I don't.
First of all, thank y'all very much for what you've done. That was a lot of work, I understand. Ms. Hall, thank you also. Does Tara have anything to say she might want to say? Any question? Okay. All right, I guess we're going to open it up. That helped me too.
Okay.
So I'm glad you did it. Anyway, I guess at this time, we'll open it up to a public hearing. If you have anything to say, come up to the podium, your name, your district, and we'll hear you out.
If I'm limping, it's because I've got the same thing as Olivia's husband has. Okay, Charlie Costello, District 2. And I've been around most of this area now for about 34 years. Live on Hills Creek Road, which is down off of West Point, Mary Point. I know about the streams going in all areas. And there are places that have flowing water and so on in those streams out there. And you can see them if you look right down at Kilmarnock, which Don showed. Almost like you to put up some of these things you had before, but let me stop just a moment. Mr. Lee asked a question about where did this come from for the 800 feet. And a friend of mine, Joe Urban, prepared a summary about changes. Are the requirements reasonable? Yes. A University of Virginia study in 1989 recommended the zone include all land 1,500 feet from the water having a minimum lot size of 2 acres. In Maryland, since 1989, the Critical Area Act recognizes the line immediately surrounding the bays and their tributaries has the greatest potential to affect water quality and wildlife habitat, and thus designated all lands within 1,000 feet of tidal waters or adjacent tidal wetlands as a critical area. That was probably the source of the 800 feet. I don't know that for a fact because I wasn't here. I was up in DC working. But it wasn't just drawn out of some air and so on. It had some basis of review and study that provided a basis, I think, for these things to happen. The biggest thing that's going to happen with what you've done as a staff thing, you developed 8 options, and we looked at all 8 options because I sat here when Olivia presented them. And then Ty Brent asked the question of, well, which one do you recommend? And she said option 3, and he said, okay, let's go to the thing and do it. It's more than that. It's the potential. Mr. Chupp was exactly right of what he's saying. It all flows down. My creek that I live on has never been, and it has the oysters on my riprap, and I can't eat them because it's polluted. All the area down to West Point and all, if you do the TMDs, is polluted. Where's it coming from? It's coming from all of it, up the stream. My stream goes up behind your house, Glenn, doesn't it? There's a stream behind you, where you live, and that's part of it. And that runs down right through the wetlands and so on. The wetlands need to be protected. They're not tidal in all cases, but the non-tidal wetlands are important. It flows down. The fact that you cannot stand there and see waterfront is too much. It's mislabeled. This is a protection for the whole county. And once you open it up, next thing will be, let's get rid of the waterfront overlay. Let's put up more places like not only High Banks is what I'm thinking of. And that was R2 and so on. And people will want to make the waterfront overlay so we can have more condos. And we'll have more. When we talk about affordable housing and workforce housing, yes, you need workforce housing, and I worked on workforce housing for this area. I worked on 13 Habitat houses. I was part of the thing that established the Habitat for Humanity Auxiliary here. I was their first treasurer. So, yes, I know about the Habitats, and I helped with those 13. And I still helped afterwards. Yes, workforce housing. Friends of Lancaster County, of which I was, and still am president, worked on things, and we had discussions. And Pete Kylik, as a supervisor, recommended a thing about North Carolina. Bill Warren was my vice president, heard about it, and he went to North Carolina, looked at it, came back, and his genesis is Mercer's Place, which is strictly for teachers and others. That's workforce housing. You need more workforce housing. Mr. Lee wants to put it up where they're going to have in Good Luck Road, the high school would recommend one time. Let's look at that land to make workforce housing on it. It will not take anything to do. It's all above the area. And you can get a lot of land that's not within that 800 feet, believe me. You don't have to take and throw the baby out with the bathwater. Really think of what you're doing. Once you've done it, not you, because it goes to the Board of Supervisors, you can't go back and put it back in the old expression, what is it? What expression do you know? You can't put the genie back in the bottle.
Thanks, John. Anybody have questions? Anybody else like to speak?
Good evening.
Good morning, afternoon.
My name is Greg White, W-E-I-K. I don't remember what district voting I'm in. To me, this whole thing is a farce. Anybody who knows anything about forest restoration, pollution, runoff, knows that all those little creeks and streams, just like this gentleman said, this parking lot is right next to the marsh. What do you think happens to the water that runs off of that parking lot? All that oil, all that fuel that sits on that parking lot. Thunderstorm comes up. That parking lot temperature is 140 degrees, easy in the sun. Boom, thunderstorm hits it. That water goes up to what? The water now coming off of that, running right into the marsh through your drainage, which you now say is going to be taken away because it's not in that overlay of yours. That water's running off at 100 degrees. What do you think that does to the frogs, the marsh, and all that oil that gets down there? It doesn't stop. It doesn't know that there's a line there that you guys have put up. If you could, go back to that, well, that one right there. You say this goes up to Black Stump Road. How many people have driven over Black Stump Road at Quarters Cove, Creek runs up through, and has seen the beavers on the upside of Quarter Creek, making a pond right there. But now you're saying, oh, no, that's not waterfront. There's no runoff from that. The beavers are holding it back. That stream runs way up there. Now you're going to put houses right along that area. You think those beavers are going to care that there's houses there because you put a line there and says it doesn't go any further? Give me a break. I'm going to lose my temper, so I got to calm down. The Chesapeake Executive Council from the state of Virginia has met with the other states. This was just in December 10th of 2024. The governor agreed to all the outlines given by that executive council. He signed it. He agreed to it. And you can look up some of the agreements about the pollution and runoff and the trees that have to be replaced. Virginia loses 55,000 trees every single year because of development, not timbering, because of development. There's also a section in there that the council I'm just going to read the last sentence of this. Not furnished, 2025 is not the finishing line, but just the beginning of the continuation of the Chesapeake Bay watershed blueprint. The state and federal governments are legally required to meet the blueprint pollution reduction and sustain them over the long period of time as in the blueprint is working. The state legally required. So if you guys are going to make this big change for something that was originally done, what did you say, 1988? Well, you say these people want to change that property now. When did they buy that property? They didn't know that it couldn't be divided since 1988? They just bought it 2 years ago, and now you know, oh, let's change the law so I can change it. No. If that property was bought, known, that was the law, you knew the law, that's where it should stay. What you have right now is an excellent, way ahead of its time legislation. Once you go to that, you're going back 20, 25 years. Like he said, if you pop that bottle, that genie gets out, you ain't putting them back. The expansion growth it would just boom, but it's going to be in the wrong place. You can't control it. There's no infrastructure for a lot of these places. They're outlying. That slide you had up with Walmart parking lot, could you bring that up? No, that's the one at the lake.
Yeah. Oh, wait a minute. Yeah, that's Walmart right there.
Okay.
Oops. Oh, daggone it. I went too far. Yeah, right there.
That's it. That's it. Okay, now you were saying that, oh, there's no streams over there. When they built Walmart, I don't know if you guys remember this, when they built Walmart and they started their parking lot, they built a overflow pond for the parking lot in the back. All right? Now you're saying that should be taken out of there because it doesn't go to the water. That dam broke in the thunderstorm. Behind my house, all the way down river of the Eastern Branch, turned yellow for days from that parking lot. So don't tell me that that doesn't get there. That was the mud from how many miles is that? Almost 3 miles away. Got all the way down to the Eastern Branch. So all these little streams and stuff, yeah, they might not be running all the time, but they do bring the pollutants. And once you put housing there, grass is the highest pollutant because we put so much fertilizer on it. It's one of the highest pollutants on the bay right today because of the nutrients, because of the fertilizers. So if you're gonna, oh yeah, it's not gonna matter, we're just gonna put some lawn here. Oh, I over-fertilized this week. Oh, we had a thunderstorm. Oh, now we got a huge algae bloom. Not right here. Oh, it's over there in Indian Creek. That doesn't bother me. You can't do that. Best practices for forestry and pollution runoff is what you have to keep. If you want to keep this area as a rural fishing, recreational, swimming, everything, you can't, the rockfish are on a decline. All the marshes are on a decline. Cobb Island disappearing. You know, you can't add to that just because it's whimsical and you think you're going to sell more property. That's crazy. Like I said, and even up in there, on that one on your proposed, you got the headwaters of the eastern branch. That area was timbered, I think it was about 6 years ago, 7 years ago. There used to be a huge rookery up there. Now, according to your new plan, that's all outside, you know. It's not gonna make any difference. But it was a blue heron rookery up there. About 30 blue heron used to make their nest there in the spring. They timbered it, boom, it's gone. There are no more herons up there. I used to have 5 herons try to claim parts of the cove behind me during the wintertime. They timbered right there along Black Stump and the headwaters of Quarter Creek. Quarter Creek, like Chumpy said, used to be able to go up there with a kayak or a canoe. That's true. We used to do that. That little stream that he's talking about, you could only go one way in a kayak or a canoe. Anybody have any idea what happened to that? It's 40 feet wide. All the marsh is gone after they timbered that corner. It's gone. Almost 2 miles of marsh that used to have a stream wide enough for a canoe is wider than this room without a stick of marsh grass in it. Now, part of that could be seawater rise, but a lot of it is runoff. Where did it come from? Oh, it didn't come from the other side of the bridge. You can't stop nature like that. What you have in this current plan is way ahead of its time when it was done. This is archaic. You're going backwards. Backwards. I thank you for your time.
Thanks, sir.
Good luck, and at least think a little about what's going to happen. Oh, a little bit, another just added note. If you wanted to make a high-density spot somewhere, think of what happened in California. You're going to reduce these lots, make them narrower, we could put more houses. Where's your infrastructure for putting out any kind of a fire out in the country? And don't say we don't have Santa Ana winds. Winds come down that creek 40 miles an hour. You start a fire one place, it's there. There is no infrastructure anywhere in the county other than the towns. 101, Kilmarnock burnt twice. So you don't want to make high density next to each other, high rises or plain little houses. It's a mistake. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. How you doing?
Hi. Hi. My name is Margaret Barden. Whoops, sorry, this is my first planning commission meeting. Right, and I don't know what district I'm from, but I can give you my address. Will that work?
That's fine.
Okay, I'm Margaret Barden, and I'm at 141 First Street in Lancaster. So, first of all, I just want to thank the Planning Commission and all the administrators here this evening for all the hard work you've done putting this together and coming out here and letting me and the other citizens speak to you tonight. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. But I do want to say that I do concur with my fellow citizens. The reason why I'm here tonight is because I am very concerned, not just about this ordinance, but by generally what I'm seeing in terms of planning for this community. I've been here a couple of years now, and you know, it just doesn't seem like there's a lot of thought being given to what's going on here. And this proposal this evening to change the zoning ordinance like this, I just wonder whether or not we're putting the cart before the horse. And what I mean by that is you're trying to go into your zoning ordinance and do a very tactical change to something that has a very organic impact on the community. And I think for me, that's what the citizens were saying, that all of these moves change the environment that we live in. It's not just like you can go in and change a little ordinance and think, oh, okay, that's not gonna be a big deal. It is a big deal. And Lancaster County is a very, very environmentally sensitive area. And we have to recognize that. I live out here because it's very beautiful and because it's very rural. And I like that. And I really enjoy living here because it is so beautiful and it is so quiet. And I get to look at the beautiful marshes as I drive down Route 3. It is a lovely place to live. And changes like this they're permanent. They're permanent. And we're in a place now in this community where the pressure to grow is there, and I completely understand that. I'm sure there's tremendous development pressure. And I do understand we need a good tax base, we want to have good services here, good schools, good places to live, and we want to try to attract development that is going to be in keeping with the community. But I've heard that the comprehensive plan is currently being changed or updated. So in my mind, I'm thinking, why wouldn't you step back and update your comprehensive plan and look at the goals for the community and then go in and start looking at how your zoning provisions are consistent with the comprehensive plan? Why would you go in and change your zoning ordinance first and then change the comprehensive plan? That makes no sense to me. You all have a roadmap for the future, and you can update that and then say, okay, we need our zoning to do this. So I'm just wondering, why zoning first, then the comprehensive plan? Because in a good, orderly growth community, you would do comprehensive plan, zoning ordinance, subdivision ordinance. You'd make sure that you were doing your capital improvements so that the community makes sure that it has all the infrastructure in place to support growth, and then you move forward from there. And that's not what I'm hearing from what's going on here. Okay, I'm probably, there is some development pressure and there is interest in developing up in these areas. And we want to try to accommodate the development pressures, but not at the expense of the entire community. That's where the rub is. And regarding housing, okay, I can tell you right now, on the income that I make in Lancaster County, I can't afford to live here. And trust me, the houses that they're going to be building up in those non-title, whatever you call it, I will never be able to afford one of those houses, okay? We do need workforce housing. I'm a worker, and I can't afford to buy a home here. And frankly, it's probably going to lead me out of this area, and it's really sad because I have a great job, and I love this community. But doing this, I'm not going to get a place to live. The kinds of places I can afford, they're next to the cornfield, where all those new solar panels are going to be going. Which, I'm going, hey, well, those houses I can afford that are on the interior of the county, I don't really want to buy one of those because I don't know if there's going to be a solar farm there tomorrow. That's kind of the way I'm thinking. So, again, I really appreciate the opportunity to come in here and talk to you all this evening. I do concur with what my fellow citizens have said. I don't think this is the right direction. I just don't think it's well thought out. And the other thing is, we don't really, it would be nice if we could see, what a sample subdivision might look like as a result of the changes in this ordinance. But we're not really seeing that. What kind of development could go into the areas that are proposed for these revisions? What will those developments look like? Do we really know? We're really being given vague information, a couple scratches through the zoning ordinance, and hey, this is going to be fine, let's go with it. I don't know. This is a really big decision. And it's not just 20 years, it's 40 years. It's 1987, that's like 30 years that we've had, 40 years. And now we're just going to go in and make a few little lines and say, no, we're not going to do that anymore. And I just don't understand. I really just don't understand. This place is too beautiful to be haphazard about this stuff. So anyway, again, I really appreciate the opportunity to share, and I'm sorry I wasn't here for the last 4 meetings. I didn't know about it. I work a lot, and honestly, I don't read the Rappahannock Record. I'm sorry. But I did find out that this was tonight, and I would like to be more involved, because I hope if there's a public engagement process here in this community, that I will be given the opportunity to participate. But from this citizen, I'm not comfortable with this.
All right, well,
Thank you all very much.
Thank you for your opinion, but I do have a couple of things I want to say.
Yes, sir.
First of all, if I understood you correctly, you said you didn't believe there was a whole lot of thought going into this process. Well, I beg to differ, because there's a lot of thought that's gone into this. Look at the work they did tonight. This is what, 4th or 5th meeting we've done? And there's a lot of process, a lot of thought going into this. And the other thing is, the comprehensive plan is done every 5 years, and we just finished it, and I'm sure it's right around the corner. And that's done by law. We have to do that. So we do it every 5 years, and like I said, it seems like it comes around every 2, but it is done. But I want you to know that you can have a say when that comes up. But you're gonna have to look at the website or the paper or something, but I respect your thoughts, but I think you missed a couple of them.
And I do
You know,
understand,
one of the
Mr.
things,
Yes, sir.
Everybody needs to step back a little bit, because when you start saying, I'm hearing this, you need to make sure it's a fact before you come in and stand up and start talking. And what you were saying about the comprehensive plan and all that was not fact. So don't just take something your neighbor said as the truth and come in before the board and start repeating those kind of things before you fact check what they saying. Because what you saying, it wasn't true.
And
Well, now, please, sir, I'm not one to, I think I have pretty good sources. I don't,
Well,
I-
Don, will you please?
No, I mean, we just finished the 5-year mandatory review and update of the comprehensive plan within the last year. So the next review will be 5 years from now. And we update it every 5 years as required by code. You mentioned the capital improvement budget. The capital improvement budget is revised every year. It's revised annually. And and what Mr. Sorensen said is absolutely correct. I agree with what Mr. Lee said. You should fact check the information that you hear before coming up here and speaking.
So when I said heard, what I was talking about is I heard that there was an upcoming public hearing, and I did want to be here, because I would like to be a part of the public engagement
And you're
process.
welcome anytime.
So that's that. And as far as I'm sure there was a lot of hard work. I thank you all for doing what you do, for the hours that you spend on this. But from the citizens' perception standpoint, perception is important. And from the perception, my perception of this is that I concur with my fellow citizens. That's my
And
statement.
that's fine. That is
And
fine.
and I will continue to make such statements. And I do feel as though I'm pretty well informed. So, thank you.
Okay.
Can I ask one question? You guys were talking about trying to get more housing and stuff. I've asked several times, does anyone know how many homes have been approved or developments have been approved already to this date? Or even a month ago in the whole county?
With the current ordinance, apparently there's nothing that's been approved. I don't think that the county is in the business of selling property to build houses to make money.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying how many.
But everybody's going into this selling,
Develop.
they're gonna make more houses, they're gonna sell them, they're gonna make.
No.
I don't know that. It's still gonna have to be approved. There's still
No,
gonna
I'm
be
saying
Chesapeake Bay.
already approved. How many homes are already approved at this time for development?
How many lots are
No, I
approved?
mean like a development, like
Hills
Hills
Court.
Court.
We have a running list in the zoning administrator's office.
I've asked for it before at meetings and everybody said nobody knew.
No, but one thing I will say is that any subdivision of 6 or more lots has to be approved by the Board of Supervisors.
Okay, so how many of those have been approved?
I haven't brought, and I've been working for the county since 2007. I'm a lifelong resident here, 13th generation of my family to live in Lancaster County. So it doesn't get much more native than me. But I can tell you, it's been years since I brought a subdivision to the Board of Supervisors for approval that was 6 or more lots. I mean, outside of the Hills Quarter master plan revision, that was not a subdivision plat. That was a master plan revision. So it's been years since we brought a subdivision of more than 6 lots.
About 2008. That's one of the big push was William Souders, William Chase things, and we had Hills Club and all the rest of us, Kings Grant. It was Grace Hill.
This
Those
change,
were all done back in 2008. The developers were in here and they're telling me it's already been let out here and the developers are coming. Lancaster County is a place to come for development. That was told me by a developer to build Grace Hill until he went bankrupt in 2008. So,
Yes, sir, you want to speak?
I'm Bill King. I think I'm District 5. First, I have a question, just to make sure I understand what we're talking about here. What you're really saying is that the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Act rules are still in effect for everything.
Correct.
Is that right? Except, and what you've done is said we want to reduce the overlay that the county has.
correct.
So if I would go back and have a piece of property that was outside of the new overlay, am I still required to have the setbacks on the RPAs that you have today?
Yes.
Okay. How do you plan to enforce that? You don't have enough compliance today to take care of the Caratoman. I mean,
How do
I'm
we-
on the Caratoman constantly, and there's grass every year, more and more grass right to the water. How are you going to enforce these RPAs? I mean, is part of this ordinance going to give you some more money to hire somebody?
I mean, the Chesapeake Bay Act enforcement is part of the zoning administrator's job, her department. And when new plats come in to be considered, I mean, all of those things are reviewed. How close the house is to the stream. It has to be 100 feet away. Now, there are multiple properties in the county that have existing structures that predate the Bay Act and are closer than 100 feet to the water.
So I'm not talking about the property. I'm talking about compliance with what happens in the RPAs.
That's part of the zoning administrator's department.
And what I'm saying is if you're going to make this kind of a change, the county needs to figure out how to fund additional compliance because you're not even able to keep up today with compliance on the properties that are on the river, let alone on all of these streams.
We investigate every complaint that is brought to us.
You're going to have a lot more complaints.
I'm sure you do.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. And I know y'all are probably getting tired, but my name is Catherine Bennett, and I'm District 2. I live on Pinkersville Road with my husband for the last 30 years. And I'm sorry, I was a bit confused about Miss Smith. I thought that she was on Crawford's Corner Road, but she apparently is in Weems. So I'm glad I've gotten that clarified with a little fact checking. So I appreciate that. I appreciate all the work that y'all have put into this, and I do have a couple of points I'd like to ask. And I understand why this is so emotional, especially to someone who has been here 13 generations. But I don't understand why we would want to lower our protections from what they are now to something that makes no sense to me whatsoever, because we have a stream on our property. Our stream will end up over at Mr. Chupp's property because we feed the eastern branch of the Caratoman. Other properties along Pinkersville Road will do that too. All of our area feeds somewhere else. So it's very important that we see that our pollution isn't going somewhere else. And there's no reason to say, well, one person wanted to subdivide their property and they couldn't. Well, I would say, well, and I asked Ms. Hall this, if I wanted to take our 100 acres and put 2,000 homes on it, I couldn't, because no is also an answer. We may not like that answer, but it is an answer. If I wanted to drive 200 miles an hour on a road, I can't do that. I could try, but I can't do that because it's not legal, and it's not legal for a reason, because it's not safe, it's not prudent, and that's what we have to do to protect each other. So groundwater is one of the items in our comprehensive plan that we have identified as something we want to protect. It sounds like to me, with changing this setback, we wouldn't be protecting that. Now, I'm a realtor. I've been a realtor for almost 30 years. I've had my own business for 20. One of the projects I'm not the most excited to tell you was I sold Hills Quarter. Not Hills Quarter. I sold High Bank. I do sell in Hills Quarter, but I sold High Bank when it was acreage. It was, I don't know, about 20 acres, and Catawba was for sale at the same time, and that was 33 acres. I approached the Board of Supervisors at that time to please buy both so that we could have a 50-acre welcome park to the northern neck. But no, we wouldn't do that. We wouldn't think of that. Now we're having to go around and create these waterfront access areas that are providing waterfront opportunities for people, and that's wonderful. And our Board of Supervisors is doing a great job with that. But that was a missed opportunity. And when we change this zoning, we are going to miss those kind of opportunities again. Now, I'm in the field like Olivia, and Olivia has just had to come to one of my clients' houses, and she said no a lot. They're having to tear off their carport because it's too close to the setbacks. Now the lady has to put in a new septic system because that's failed. And guess where she is? She's on Regina Road. Now, why would it matter what happens to this little lady who is a senior citizen and disabled? Why would it matter if her septic wasn't functioning right, if her water quality doesn't affect somewhere else? Well, it does affect it. That's why we have these regulations, because all of this goes together. What's happening at my property, what's happening at Ms. Pittman's property, it all flows together, and it's very important that we look at it that way. One of the things I really dislike, because I'm an old Girl Scout, is waste. I love to see us reuse and conserve and take advantage of what the things are that are important to us. This change, to me, is creating waste because we are not protecting what we could be protecting and what we should be and have been protecting. Now, I know it's upsetting because a lot of people would like to build more properties. And to your question about how many lots are already approved, I did a little calculation, just sort of, back of the envelope kind of calculation. And these are properties that I am calculating, or as a realtor, are already approved for subdivision. Now, and one of the things I wanted to say was it's an opinion, it's a matter of opinion, what's too far inland and what's not. Because I don't live on the water, but it is beautiful and it should be preserved. No matter where you are, if somebody considers it too far inland, it's not too far inland. So in my calculation, there are And based on what I thought I understood about the 2035 plan that was just redone, that we were looking for 1,000 new workers who were the work age, thank you. And I'm still working, even though I'm more than 65. So in my calculation, we have more than 1,000 lots already on the books or close to being on the books, including, for example, 114 acres in Kilmarnock that's for sale between Irvington Road and School Street. That could easily be done. Kings Grant has 575. Hills Quarter just got 200, how many lots?
No, they got 137 additional lots.
Okay, 137 lots. I attached to the information that I handed out tonight, there are 65 lots actively for sale or under contract, which is also considered for sale, in Lancaster County alone. And that number constantly changes. We have properties on and off the market constantly. So if somebody's looking for a lot, and I only went up to 60,000 because that was an easy number to break to. But that group is attached to your handout tonight. So easily we have the 1,000 lots. Now, everybody who moves to this county is not going to want a brand-new house. Robert and I bought 3 houses on Pinkersville Road that we use for affordable rental. And we redid them. They already had existing driveways and existing septic systems and wells and all of that. So what I'd like to encourage the Planning Commission to do is to look at ways that we can tie into government programs like HUD that offers money to renovate properties. And I've attached a whole bunch of resources for you right here in your handout. So this whole process of saying all of this is for affordable housing. Of course, everyone wants affordable housing, 100%. What kind of Grinch wouldn't want affordable housing? But the problem is, if it's driven by a developer who, and I'm sorry that our chairman is not here tonight. I'm sure he was aware that this was a big, important meeting, and he's apparently in Florida or somewhere. So I don't know if y'all want to delay your vote until you have your actual board back together, but that would be nice.
One of the things I want to say, as far as workforce housing, we call it workforce housing instead of affordable housing, because the 2035 group, they are subcommittees that's working on just about everything that you got in here.
Good.
Already looking into it, so.
Good. Well, Ken, is there a way for us to hold off on this decision until we can coordinate with some of these programs? Like Governor Youngkin just did a whole big presentation in November to address the housing, and he's putting out $75 million working with a group called Virginia Housing to do the Workforce Housing Investment Program. Now, if we're making these changes so we can put in more lots and then we can have more houses, why are we doing that? First off, we've got about 1,000 lots already on the books. It's pretty straightforward there. We can renovate, and that's in the 2035 plan, about taking existing properties and renovating them like Robert and I have done. And it's pretty straightforward, and it's cheaper.
Yeah, a lot of things that you stated, we already.
Okay, well, we'd be happy to let all of that sort of come to fruition before we make this kind of sweeping change. So, and I thought it was very interesting. I put in here a flyer from the Women's Club in Richmond, of which I'm a member. They're even concerned, about, not Lancaster, but they're concerned about how affordable housing is affecting zoning. And the reason why I thought that was interesting is that they have a group in Richmond, And that group, the Partnership for Housing Affordability, has all kinds of services and links that might help us in preparing and planning for our needs to match affordable housing. Now, as a Realtor, I can tell you that it's not just the house that you're working with. You've got to deal with people's finances. So we could easily put together a workshop, seminars, whatever, and work with Habitat for Humanity, work with all kinds of people to put together the whole package that someone's going to need to be able to either buy or build a house. And in that, there's first-time home buyer programs, there's all sorts of things, and there's lots of money out there for first-time home buyers. So we're not inventing the wheel here. There are lots of programs out there from HUD has grants from many other organizations, and I put them in your packet. So I would like to ask that if you do approve this, don't do it retroactively for subdivisions. Don't do it for new subdivisions. Make it specific for individual properties that want to make these subdivisions of their property. So a major developer, for example, is said to be doing some planning to do a subdivision over at Walmart. And another one is planning to go over by Tractor Supply. And so these are big developers who are coming in. We just sold, in my company, we just closed this last week on a property in Grace Hill, $255,000 for a single working nurse at one of the local nursing homes. So, and I know Olivia's search only went up to 250, but we're also, but it needed to go just a little bit higher so that you could have captured that buyer. There's lots and lots of opportunity for people to be buying, and we need to look at it as an entirety, as a whole thing. So I would encourage us to coordinate and to explore financing opportunities through HUD to take care of abandoned properties. On my own dear Pinkersville Road, there are 10 or so properties of which I have complained, and nothing has happened. So if you wanted to have a tour of a lot of broken-down houses, Pinkersville Road is your destination. So
There's a list being compiled already.
okay, well, come on, because if Pinkersville Road looked like it does today, I don't know that we would have bought there. So it has really become a problem. So maybe we take the old schools that we're about to have, the high school and already the primary school. You know, Northumberland County has taken an old school and they converted it to housing. Maybe we do that. Robert and I rented an apartment in an old department store in Richmond. It was lovely. There are wonderful ways to do this, and there's lots of land. If the septic is a problem, there's new septic ways to do things. So, so just encourage that the whole go chapter 2, this whole thing about goal number 2, ensure that new development is designed in a manner that provides for continued protection of the surface and groundwater resources of Lancaster County and the state of Virginia. That's in our plan. We need to follow that. So, and I just would like to encourage us to plan before we just jump in and make a change. And I know you all have been working so hard, and I apologize for not coming to more meetings, but I'm attuned to it now. So, and thank you so much.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right.
My name is Robert Bennett, District 2. I'll be very brief. I'm retired. I used to work for the Department of Conservation and Recreation. I was Director of Dam Safety and Floodplain Management. I also was a regional manager of the Tappahannock DCR office. I'm very familiar with the Chesapeake Bay Act and erosion and sediment control, stormwater management, and This is a bad idea. That's the simple thing. This is a bad idea. Workforce housing is a good idea, but we don't give up our environmental requirements for workforce housing. That's not necessary. A previous plan for Lancaster County showed about 30,000 acres available that have no environmental requirements whatsoever. So why do we want to focus in workforce housing, or any housing really, in an environmentally sensitive area? It's not like you can't build in those areas. They say 2-acre lots, which is reasonable. But when you get into doubling that, you're doubling the runoff, you're doubling the pollution, your issues with septic, all of that focuses and runs off, and that's what creates the water quality problems in the Chesapeake Bay. Now, recently, EPA said they're coming up on the 2025 review. There are 2 states that aren't going to pass, Pennsylvania and West Virginia. They said Virginia is going to pass. We're doing the right things, and we're doing it because the people that sat up there 30 years ago and did that knew that that area is sensitive because that's where the runoff. If you stand out and you say, well, there's no water here, I don't see any water. When it rains, there's runoff, and it's going in a lot of directions. And so I really believe that changing this and increasing density in those sensitive areas is not a good idea. Let's keep doing what we've been doing, what the people did 30 years ago who sat there and came up with this really great idea. It's better than the Chesapeake Bay Act. So thank you very much, and thank you for all your work.
Appreciate it. Anybody else? Is anybody on the phone? Go ahead.
I just want to, if you guys can take this down.
One more minute.
I'm just going to hand you this if you can take it. This is the page from the most recent Chesapeake Bay Executive Council meeting, which the governor signed and went along with,
Okay.
which this does not comply with.
All right.
I want to make a statement here because there's so much emphasis been put on development and developers and people coming in and building up everything. I'm going to give y'all a situation. Sometimes a segment of the community gets left out. In the part of the community that I'm part of, a lot of land is passed down from generation to generation. Sometimes it's 5 acres, sometimes it's 15 acres, sometimes it's 25. Well, the people that receive that land, they get out and work and do all this stuff, and the only way they can build a house, they got to build it on this piece. So the kids get together, and they say, well, we're going to divide this land up. There's 5 of us, we'll divide it up. Well, when they come up here and they meet with Olivia or whoever's in that seat, and they say, well, you still can't build there because you only got 5 acres, there's 5 of you all. That's only an acre piece. You're in the waterfront overlay. You can't do it. But that's all they got. Do you hear me? That's all they got. They're not going there and paying 60, 70, 30, 20. Some of them can't pay $10,000 for an acre land. But they got that piece of land that they can walk into a bank or loan office and say, hey, I got a piece of land here. I want to build a house. And y'all keep harping on developers and all that, and you're missing a segment of the population that's all they got is the land. And it's caught up in this right here. And it's caught up. And that's unfair. I don't care what you said is unfair. And what the staff has come up with is not unreasonable like you all keep saying. Because you can say that all you want, Charlie. Charlie, I've been here. You come here. A lot of people come here. Don and myself might be the only ones that been around this long. Yeah, Claudia, but you're not as old as I am.
I'm only a few years behind.
I'm 74.
70.
So, but what I'm trying to say is, sometimes you forget. You forget about these people out here. That's all they got. That's all they got. And we keep coming up with this thing saying, well, it's 1,000 lots available here. They can't buy them. But they sitting on an acre over here, or an acre and a half, that they could build something on. And you know what usually happens? They end up selling it.
Well, Bill,
They end up selling it. And then, you know, they end
you
up,
all make exceptions all the time. Why
we ain't
not?
make no exceptions in this waterfront overlay.
There is.
There are.
No,
We have-
no, no,
No.
no.
No. No.
Well, in my
Well, then
I
why
did a
don't
carve
you
out.
do something about that particular aspect?
Because
You don't
Charlie,
have to throw out the whole damn thing.
Right.
That's what we're
That was in
saying.
my proposal to do.
no, the answer is the Board of Zoning Appeals could grant a variance.
There it is.
But once they set that precedent, it would be expected of every variance request that comes to the BZA. Steve is the chairman of the BZA, and he can tell you that. There's also language in the state code for the Board of Zoning Appeals that says that if variances become so common and they are granted so often, the zoning ordinance needs to be changed to reflect those variances.
Then take it through that thing, because precedent, as we know, is subject to change. You can change things, they happen all the time. We all know the biggest precedent that was done, the Supreme Court did it. 50 years, 60 years, what's our precedent?
All right, I think we're sort of getting off here. Is anybody on the phone? Go ahead. Anybody on the phone?
Hey,
Nobody?
guys, listen.
All right, I'm gonna close this public hearing, and we're gonna, sort of stop it here.
Real quick. From the beginning, I've always talked about, trying to protect stuff around. I've been here all my life. I ain't never been nowhere else. I ain't never lived nowhere else. We do have to protect, but we also have to help the community also. We need to figure out a way to do that, to do both, basically,
Do a carve out for individual hardships, that would be my plan.
Hardships, man.
Not to inherit any land.
Ma'am, let me tell you something. I've been here all my life. I grew up drawing water from a well in Buston Wood. That's what I did. And I've lived here and I can afford to live here because I work here. So, but we have to give everybody the opportunity. There's a lot of people, and I'm always for protecting. That's my first question whenever we're doing anything. But there are 18, 19-year-old, 20-year-olds right now living in their parents' house that have nowhere to build. You know what I mean? I'm against polluting any of our waters. I swam here, I fish here, but we have to do something to help the smaller portion of the community, man. Everybody doesn't live on the water. I've never lived on the water. I've been here all my life. So, I mean, you have to protect these waters, but we still have to do something to help the community also.
But not this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's-
There are a lot of things you can do.
There's lots
Yeah,
of
but
programs that
that's what
I-
I'm saying. Like, guys, it's so easy. Like, I don't understand half of what they do, and they do a good job at it. I mean, it takes a long time to put all this together. A long time. And I mean, they've been here. They've been doing the research, and I don't think we need to move it down to 200 feet, but I think that something has to be done. I think it's a way that we can get this thing done and still have everything safe if we.
Do a carve out for individuals, I put that in my proposal, not for
Or
separate.
pre-owned property that dates back.
Well, wait a minute. Now, we're going back and forth now, and I don't think we need to do that.
Public hearing's
So,
closed.
this is a hot topic, obviously. And not everybody's gonna be happy. And in my line of work, I'm used to that. So, somebody's gonna go away mad, somebody's gonna go away happy. I kind of agree with Mr. Lee. I think, it seems to me from what I've heard in this room tonight, that y'all are more worried about big subdivisions coming in than you're all worried about the water itself. Even though you didn't leave out the water, you're worried about people coming in and building. There are people, the only thing I see about this, the benefit I see from this, is that people, Mr. Lee, he says he's been here all his life. He knows people who live on the water, that's all they got. I'm sure there's a lot of people like that. You still have to go by the Chesapeake Bay. Chesapeake Bay says it only has to be 100 feet. We've made that a whole lot more. We keep talking about this genie. I don't know where this genie's come from. I don't know where the bottle is. But I can tell you that you can always come back, if it doesn't work, you can always come back here to go through the process. But the bottom line is, our job up here is not to pass this thing. Our job is only to decide whether we're gonna send it, how we're gonna send it to the Board of Supervisors. That's all we do. We don't say it's good, we don't say it's gonna happen. All we do is decide how it's gonna be sent to the Board of Supervisors. They're the ones that are gonna have to make the decision.
And I think that the research that has been done, there's nothing else we can do. I mean, the research has been done, it has been put before us, and as my colleague says, it's not up to us to pass it. It's up to us to do the research, to do the heavy lifting, and it's up to the Board of Supervisors to carry it the rest of the way. But I would like to ask Don, if you know, how many people have come to ask for a not subdivision, not the big subdivision, but to subdivide their property? How often do you get that request?
Well, I don't get that request anymore in my position. Olivia gets it now. And she's had, over the past 6 months, I would say 4 to 5 folks who came in not looking to create these huge subdivisions that you're talking about. They're looking to cut off one lot from their property or 2 lots. And they find out that they're subject to the waterfront residential overlay and they can't do it.
Guys, I feel like we should move this on to next month, man, because we haven't even had
Wait a
time to
minute.
really.
Okay. I don't know if we did that.
Yeah, Tar, go ahead, Tar. Is she muted? She didn't have much of a voice left when I talked to her today at 2 o'clock, so. Tar, can you hear us? Oh, she's calling me now. Hello?
Put her on speaker. Put her microphone.
While he's listening to that.
Yeah, let me put you on
Thank y'all for coming
speakerphone.
and
Can you
voicing your
mute
opinion.
your Zoom? Because we're getting a little bit of a feedback here. Let me see. Yeah, I think it is. I'm gonna put you on speakerphone. All right, this is Tara Booth. Let me see. Tara, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great, thank you. Sorry I'm not there with you all this evening. Unfortunately, I'm home with bronchitis, so I'm trying to fight that. But I just wanted to say, first, Mr. Sorensen, we are out of the public hearing. Is that correct?
You're out of what?
Public hearing.
Public hearing?
Yes, we are. The public hearing was closed, yes.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to say to the Planning Commission, obviously we're all listening to all the comments of the public. One of the things that kind of set with me was something that Mrs. Bennett said. She said something about maybe if we did nothing else and we wanted to move forward, looking at only applying this to individual properties and not large subdivisions. So I just throw that out to the rest of you to see where you stand on that.
If a change was made, the effective date would be the date the Board of Supervisors approved it, and any new subdivisions created after that date would be subject to the new ordinance, the amended ordinance, if that helps.
But is there a way to say that it could only be subdivided into the smaller parcels if it was an individual property and not a subdivision?
I don't know if you could have it applied to a certain number, like subdivisions of 10 homes or less or something like that. That would be a legal question that we'd have to float through Jim Cornwell. I can't respond to that.
Okay, I don't know how the rest of the board would feel about that, but I just want to throw that out there.
I think what she's going with, correct me if I'm wrong, I think she's saying, okay, if we pass this, we exclude developers and people like that coming in and being able to do it, but we allow, like if I had it and I want to give my son an acre, that they could do it by special exception or something like that. You know? I think they want to exclude development. I don't know where you.
Yeah, that's a legal question. I don't know the answer to that.
It should be Franco, heritage, legacies type of things, you know? You have your things. We came here, we chose to come here, we paid to come here, we've built this place, and we've volunteered, we've done everything we should. And now you're saying, well, throw everything else out. But you've got a good point. For 5 people, whether your families are, let's pick something, and I think that's where Terry's leading. Let's go with that type of thing.
Yes.
You can work it out. It can be done legally, I know.
So
If you
5
do-
or fewer lots.
If you do something that says it's heritage, it was before the change in 1988. His family or somebody else, or anybody who owned a large piece of property within that zone could be granted a division of that piece of property. You could write something like that up.
Right.
So it would just, anybody who already owned property before your change could then be,
Fewer than 5
you know,
lots.
retroactive or however words you use.
Yeah.
So that it could
it's a
be
legal
divided
question.
by the family, not by a commercial.
I would be in favor of exploring that. I think there's so much more fairness in that approach. I mean, all these other people that we're talking about, when they bought their land, this act has been in effect for years.
Yeah, I'm not talking about you because
I
you mentioned that.
I checked that out. Everyone that I checked out had bought after this act was in effect. These legacy people, you know, they didn't know it. Seems to me there's a whole lot
Your
more
points are
fairness
well
in that
taken,
approach.
I have no problem.
I don't have a problem with that
It's not
either.
a black and white
Let's
thing
do
either,
that.
guys.
You know,
But I think Mr. Davenport had a question, if you did, and I understand we have to check legal, but if it's inherited and passed down, it would have to apply to whoever would it apply to people who owned it prior to 1988, but it was inherited and, I'm not making sense, I know, because I don't understand myself.
No, you're
But
right.
you know what I'm trying to say.
I think we should.
Air property.
Something to look at. Sure.
It's a legal question. I think it would be more tight if it was based on a number, like subdivisions, you know, over a certain number or under a certain number. This would not apply to.
Trying subdivisions, make it.
Trying to apply some type of heritage to it, I think there's a lot of loopholes that could come out of that. But it's a legal question. We can ask.
Before 1988.
It's not gonna hurt to ask her.
No.
I know we've been working on this a long time, and I'm probably talking more than I should because I'm not part of the planning commission.
No, but I agree with what you're saying.
But I think at this point, Don, it's no sense in trying to vote
Yeah.
on this tonight. That we need to look at these couple things and then maybe Tara and
Ty and Tara to be here.
Ty to get the whole full board.
Thanks.
You know, to look at the answers that they come back with and then go from there because.
I agree.
I agree too.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that at all. It makes sense.
So we have to make a motion to take it.
I'm also good with that.
She said she's also good with that.
So I make a motion that we table a decision to present it to the Board of Supervisors until the full board is here to make a vote.
All right, there's a motion on the floor.
And that we explore this possibility, right? That the staff explore that.
Yes, we can add that. And that the staff explore the concerns that were brought before us tonight.
All right, there's a motion on the floor to hold off on here, the vote, and to have the other items that were brought up looked into. Is there a second?
Second that motion.
I second it.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Ayes have it. That'll be it.
Thank you,
I
Mark.
have to say, it was a very good hearing. The sentiments brought up by you folks, I think were right on target, and you did an excellent job.
Anything else?
No, sir.
All right, next month is,
Yeah, next, you'll also have capital improvement budget next month. And if we have the answers to this will come back. If not, it may be March. We'll see.
all right, if it's nothing else, I'm gonna close the meeting because I think it's already closed.
There you go. Thank you, Tar. See you.